Today on NBC, most of you will see the American League's leading hitter, Ricky Henderson, lead the New York Yankees, winners of 10 of their last 11, into Cleveland Stadium to battle the Indians. Or some of you will see the Baltimore Orioles take on the owners of baseball's best record, Tom Trebelhorn, surprising Milwaukee Brewers. And then join us as some of golf's greatest names of the past, legends of golf. But first, NBC Sports presents Major League Baseball, an inside look brought to you by Castrol, the motor oil engineered for today's smaller cars, and by Armor All. It's the finishing touch every time you wash your car. It's going to be a big day of baseball, followed by golf right here on NBC. I'm Ahmad Rashad, sitting in for Marv Albert. The baseball season is still young, but some interesting races are starting to shape up. The most surprising team of all has been the Milwaukee Brewers, who opened the season with 13 straight wins and still found the Yankees nipping at their heels. Last night in Milwaukee, the Brewers jumped out to a quick lead on Rob Deere's 8th home run of the year, a 2-run shot in the first inning. Then with the score tied at 4, Glenn Bragg singled to right, scoring Paul Molitor with the go-ahead run. Ted Higuera went all the way, striking out 6 for his second complete game as he remains undefeated at 4-0, as the Brewers defeat the Orioles 6-4. In Cleveland, the Yankees' Ricky Henderson, who homered earlier against Phil Niekro, now hit his second in the game off reliever Steve Carlton, which gives the Yanks the lead in the ninth. But in the bottom half, the Indians' Corey Snyder lined a single, scoring Julio Franco from second base as the Indians stopped the Yankees' 10-game winning streak with a 6-5 victory. The man who has led the Milwaukee Brewers out of the wilderness is a man that very few people outside of baseball knew before the beginning of this season. And he's with us today, Milwaukee Brewer manager Tom Trebelhorn. Tom, how you doing today?
Very good, Ahmad. Thank you very much.
Good. I guess the first question I have to ask you is, how disappointing was that loss when you guys were at 13-0?
Well, we just play them one at a time, Ahmad, and every day we've got to play as well as we can because those New York Yankees are playing tough. And I think before the end of the season's out, Toronto's going to be right there. Cleveland's going to be better. So we got to play them one at a time, and we've done that pretty good to this point. I noticed that some of the players were saying that it was sort of a relief to get that thing out of the way and get on with the season. Well, it's never a relief to lose, but it was a bit of a media crunch relief, which I think got guys back on earth and got ready to just play the game in the same type of fashion and preparation that we had up into numbers 12 and 13. Tom, you know, a lot of your players are saying that you're responsible for this winning attitude there. Well, that's nice to hear, but really, we just kind of get them ready to play and turn them loose, and to this point, it's been a pleasure to sit back and watch them play because they've played very, very well. But you got a team that took 6th place last year, and then all of a sudden they're off to a start like this. Was it surprising to you? Well, as we went through it day by day, it was surprising to keep winning and to have things turn out so well. But sitting here and looking back on all our wins and our one loss, we deserved every win and we deserved the loss. So looking back, I'm not surprised, but as we went through it game by game, I was delighted and surprised to win so many in a row, of course. You know, there's been a lot of things said about you being a teacher in the offseason. Are there things that you bring from the teaching profession into managing a baseball team? I think patience and classroom control, I guess. And these guys have been great. And we just try to have a plan every day against every team, have an overall plan with our pitching staff, try to prepare the best we can with those plans in mind, and go out and play as well as we can. All right, last question now. Is this a young baseball team off to a good start, or are you a real contender? Well, I think we're a contender. I certainly like being 13 over 500 right now. The key thing we can't do is fritter this advantage away. And how consistent we play with this advantage we've gotten early will determine how far, how long, and how deeply into September we can contend. But we have a good blend of veteran players, fine use with good tools, and if we stay that way and stay consistent, then it's going to be a lot of fun for the rest of this season. All right, Tom, thanks for being with us today and continued success throughout the rest of the season. Thank you very much. All right, Tom was hardly a household name when he took that substitute teaching job out in Portland last winter. One-day reporter Carl Click of KGW-TV visited his classroom.
You know who the manager of the Milwaukee Brewers is?
Herman Ken.
If I asked you who the Milwaukee Brewers manager was, would you know?
No.
Did you know he was your substitute teacher today?
Him?
That's him.
Next winter, Tom Trebelhorn should get a lot more respect. And we'll be back with a look at the free agent situation right after this message. baseball's first month winds down, we turn our attention to a few stars who have yet to visit the diamond this season. Former Brave Bob Horner will be dining on sushi in the Japan Central League, and a lot of sushi at that because he's making 300 million yen a year. His ex-teammate Doyle Alexander joined such standouts as Rich Gedman, Ron Guidry, and Bob Boone in the unemployment line. But perhaps the most notable by his absence has been defending National League batting champion Tim Raines. And our Bill McAtee paid him a visit earlier this week.
This April has been unlike any other in Tim Raines' baseball career. Instead of hitting and running and catching in the manner that has made him one of baseball's most complete players, Tim Raines waits. This past Monday, Tim Raines was taking an aerobics class in Sarasota, Florida, at about the same time his former teammates were playing their home opener. So far, Montreal has missed his skills.
When you decided to become a free agent and you sat down and you figured out your war plan, was this a realistic possibility? Did you think you were going to have to sit out?
I really didn't think it was a possibility. I thought, given the circumstances, being the type of player that I am, that I would be playing somewhere.
One theory amid charges of collusion was that if any player could tempt the owners, it was Raines, but he remains unsigned. The issue is now so sensitive he was constantly accompanied by one of his attorneys during our stay.
Maybe people can look at me and say, well, he's a greedy player, he wanted a lot of money, that's the reason why he's not playing, and you know, he doesn't deserve to play baseball. I feel that the people that really feel that way really don't know the type of person that I am.
Every afternoon, Tim works out with the local high school team. A sort of highlight film come to life for the Palmetto Tigers. And Tim knows he's hardly a victim, having originally turned down a multi-million-dollar offer from Montreal. But he's anxious and waiting for May 1st when he can again negotiate with the Expos.
Baseball is changing, and I have no bitter feelings towards anyone. The only thing that matters to me right now is just to get back in baseball.
The players that haven't signed become eligible to re-sign with their old team May 1st, which causes a little bit of a problem. How do they negotiate? Now, here to talk about that is USA Today baseball editor Hal Bodley. Hal, are these players at the mercy of their teams at this point?
I think to a certain degree they are. But back on January the 8th, when they rejected final offers, they turned down what the clubs had offered them, and they tested the free agent waters, and they weren't quite as rich as they thought they were going to be. So we're really talking about 5 key players: Tim Raines, Rich Gedman, Doyle Alexander, Bob Boone, and Ron Guidry. Tim Raines is going back to Montreal. It's almost all signed and sealed, although they're not legally allowed to do that until May the 1st. He'll get $4.8 million for 3 years. It's pretty much set that Rich Gedman's going back to Boston and Ron Guidry to the Yankees. Now, Bob Boone might be talked to by Houston, which this ball club is in need of a catcher. So the Angels are kind of lukewarm on Bob Boone, so there's a chance he might go to Houston. And Doyle Alexander will go back to Atlanta, but the Braves are probably going to cut down their offer.
This is the owner's way of saying, hey, we are going to control these salaries, not the agents or the ball players.
You've got it. All of these players went out in the free agent market, and they got offers. They got pretty good offers, but none of them were as good as the final offer on January the 8th.
I see that some of the contracts are structured a little bit differently now. There's a lot of incentive clauses.
That's right, there really are. But let's take Steve Carlton, for example, the Cleveland pitcher. He signed a contract for $75,000. Now, if he's still with the ball club on May the 1st, he's going to get an extra $10,000. If he's with the ball club on June the 1st and so on for the remainder of the season, and he'll get up to about $395,000 based on the number of innings he pitches and the games and that type of thing.
Do you think this is good for the game, that players should get paid for what they do?
I think it's good for the game for those kinds of players who are trying to prove themselves, players coming back from injuries, but I don't think it's good for the kinds of players that are going to get 250 at-bats or whatever it might be during the season, you know, to get a certain amount of money, and as that escalates.
What about incentives like the All-Star game? Now, I understand that you have some late-breaking news on that.
The All-Star game could be a problem. Now, here's the reason why. The ballot that is put out, and it'll be announced in a couple of weeks, is based on opening day rosters. Now, players that are on the opening day roster get a chance to be on the All-Star ballot. But Tim Raines wasn't on the opening day roster, so he's not going to be on the ballot, and neither of any of these other free free agent. So the problem will be, will these players get enough write-in votes to make the All-Star team?
What about these weird quirks that I keep reading about? Guys getting Jell-O in the contract and all kind of strange things like
Charlie
that?
Kerfeld of Houston, the zany relief pitcher, right. He had his agent build into his contract 37 boxes of orange Jell-O because he wanted to play pranks on his teammates. Now, his number's 37. That's how he reached the figure of 37. But Charlie's not been pitching very well lately. So the Jell-O's on hold.
Gee, you should have called me. I'd send him a Jell-O free.
Right.
That's the only weird quirk?
No, there's a lot of them. You know, like Rich Sutcliffe with the Chicago Cubs wants a king-size bed when the team's on the road. Dave Kingman, when he was with Oakland, used to wanted to have a water bed when he was on the road, and, you know, things like that.
I tell you, baseball, what a wonderful sport. Thanks, Hal, for coming by.
I look forward.
All right. Now, we'll be back with more right after this. This week in baseball had many highs and lows. The Milwaukee Brewers' winning streak, miscommunication, and a triple play. Monday night in Chicago, the Milwaukee Brewers tied a Major League record of 13 consecutive victories to start the season, set by the 1982 Atlanta Braves by defeating the White Sox 5-4. The following night, the White Sox ruined the Brewers' bid to continue their unbeaten streak by blasting Milwaukee 7-1. Tuesday night in Pittsburgh, the Pirates turned the first triple play this season. Mets' Tim Tupple grounded to second baseman Johnny Ray, who recorded the out at first. Then shortstop Denny Gonzalez ran down Darryl Strawberry between second and third and threw to catcher Junior Ortiz, who tracked down Gary Carter to complete the triple play. Wednesday afternoon in Anaheim, a major league collision. Oakland A's right fielder Mike Davis and center fielder Dwayne Murphy crashed going after Angels Gary Pettis inside the park homer. Both had to be helped off the field, Murphy by his teammates and Davis on a stretcher. Murphy's now on the 15-day disabled list. Wednesday night in San Francisco, Giants manager Roger Craig intentionally walked Pedro Guerrero twice to get to Mike Marshall. And when Marshall hit one out of the park, the excitement began when he circled the bases, taunting Roger Craig. Giants pitcher Scott Garrett's next pitch sailed over Alex Torino's head, and both benches cleared, led by Pedro Guerrero, who was easily restrained, and Mike Marshall later apologized to Roger Craig. You know, it seems like the Dodgers and the Giants have been going at it since the beginning of time. Now, I'd like to apologize briefly to the fans who hope to see the Giants-Brave game today, because the Brewers' hot start led us to make the switch to their game. We'll be here all afternoon to keep you up to date. Now, let's go out to baseball.
1982, the Brewers and Orioles battle till the final day of the season in Baltimore. But when the dust settles, the AL East belongs to Milwaukee. They'll go on to the World Series before losing to the Cards in 7. But since then, the Brew Crew has gone flat. And now, 5 years later, only 4 holdovers remain from that championship season. But these veterans have combined with a group of eager youngsters to make the Brewers the story of this season's first month. A week and a half ago in Baltimore, Robin Yount with a great catch of Eddie Murray's fly ball. It ends the game and gives Juan Nieves a no-hitter. The Brewers are off to a 9-0 start. Eventually, the streak will reach a record-tying 13. And the high point came last Sunday at County Stadium. Down 4-1 in the bottom of the 9th against Texas, Rob Deere's 3-run homer ties it. And then, with Gantner on first, the hitter is Dale Swain. This one's gone, and County Stadium rocks as it hasn't since the '82 series. Eventually, the White Sox snapped the record-tying streak. But last night, behind Teddy Higuera's 4th win without a loss, the Brewers go to 14-1. They're back on top in the American League East and back on the game of the week.
National Broadcasting Company, now in its 7th decade of bringing you baseball's memories. Baseball's milestones. Baseball's majesty. And baseball's magical moments. NBC Sports proudly presents the Major League Baseball Game of the Week. Today, from Milwaukee County Stadium, it's the Baltimore Orioles versus the Milwaukee Brewers. The Game of the Week is brought to you by Miller Lite. For great taste, there is only one light beer. By Quaker State Motor Oil. When car-carrying people reach for the best, they reach for Quaker State Motor Oil. By the Century 21 System, the largest real estate sales organization in America. And by Shopvax Litter Critter, the manual push sweeper that cleans driveways, patios, and other outdoor surfaces.
Chilly Saturday in Milwaukee. A pair of right-handers set to go. Ken Dixon for the Orioles. He's 1-1 for the year. Bill Wegman for the Brewers. He's won his only decision. Hi, everybody. Bob Costas with Tony Kubek. The amazing Brewers go to 14-1 behind Teddy Higuera last night with a 6-4 win over the Orioles. For more on the Milwaukee saga, let's go to Tony.
All right, Bob, thank you. With me, two young left-handers. One has already pitched a no-hitter. The other has already won 20 games. Juan asked Teddy Higuera what he was thinking about when you pitched your no-hitter.
¿Cómo te sentías cuando lancé juego sin hit?
Pues yo me sentía muy feliz, contento y muy feliz porque culminaste una hazaña más en el béisbol de las Grandes Ligas y qué bueno que entraste a los libros de la historia y para mí pues yo me sentí muy feliz.
He said that he was feeling very proud of me and proud of the whole team, and it was a major accomplishment for us to and for me to be able to throw a no-hitter. He feels that he was very proud of it, and he felt like he was part of the pitching. He was happy for me also that because I was in the Hall of Fame and in books now, in the history of the books, and he just felt really happy, excited, and of the accomplishment made that night.
Juan, how about you? Last year when Teddy became as good a left-handed starter as in the American League, he won his 20th. What were you thinking about?
Well, I lived every game he pitched. I enjoyed every game he pitched all year round, even win or lose, he was always out there, and I feel like I pitched my own game too. I was exhausted mentally, and I really enjoyed every game he pitched. It was he's the greatest.
Ask Teddy very quickly for an answer. Can this young pitching staff hold up and win the Eastern Division American League?
¿Tú crees que este staff de picheo puede, si nos podemos aguantar ahí, podemos ganar la liga, esta división?
Pues necesitamos un picheo más agresivo y podemos ganar la división de esta liga y jugando como estamos jugando el equipo, agresivo, fuerte, pienso que si llegamos a unos playoffs.
He said that, if we keep our pitching very aggressive, we can be able to do that.
Muchas gracias, mis amigos. Buena suerte.
Muchas
Adios.
Gracias.
We'll be back with the starting lineups to Milwaukee County Stadium and these crazy Milwaukee fans that can best be described as Costas-like.
First 7 or 8 home dates of this 87 season, the Brewers have just about doubled their attendance average from 86. We'll see how long the mania lasts. They're out in force today despite 46-degree temperatures at game time. Bill Wegman set to face this lineup. Alan Wiggins has been hot, switch hitting DH and leadoff man, followed by Burleson, Ripken, Murray, Lynn. Eddie Murray and Fred Lynn slumping at the start of the season. Ray Knight, Terry Kennedy, Larry Sheets, Ken Gerhardt will play left field and hit ninth. Wiggins has hits in 10 of his last 18 at-bats. 2 hits last night, takes a strike.
They have been averaging here in Milwaukee County Stadium just under 30,000 with every pitch. It seems to be the 7th game of the World Series. Wegman, one of the great young arms on this staff, not a real hard thrower, 4 basic pitches. He spots his fastball, slider, curve, and changeup. An outstanding athlete, holds runners on, fields his position well.
Breaking ball grounded towards second. Brock cuts in front of Gantner to make the play on the throw to Wegman. Greg Brock, the former Dodger, and if ever a player benefits from getting out of the limelight of a city like Los Angeles and coming to what he expected to be a low-key situation in Milwaukee, low-key until they broke from the gate with 13 straight wins, it has been Brock. This is a better environment for him.
Rob Deere, who plays like Gorman Thomas, favorite here for many years. Yount, Braggs, and great talent in right field. Molitor, Swam, Gantner, of course, and Brock. And a young catcher who you're going to hear an awful lot of, as you will hear a lot of many of these youngsters, B.J. Surhoff. Burleson battling a terrific slump.
He's battled worse. It took him 4 years to come back. Once one of baseball's premier shortstops before the rotator cuff injury ended his career with the Red Sox. He went to the minors, went through all kinds of rehabilitation, played just 56 big league games in a 4-year stretch before making it back last year and playing a role in the Angels championship in the American League West.
And at least 4th time since spring training, his right shoulder has popped out again on him. And he just stands out in the field and tries to put it back in place.
Here's Gantner, the guy they call Gumby, throws Burles around.
You know, the veterans they have on this ball club, and Harry Dawson, the general manager, has made so many good deals, went into the free agent market one time and was very successful, battled the Cardinals almost to a World Championship. And then he decided to stay with key veterans and develop the farm system. And they picked some beauties. When you look at Molitor, Gantner, Cooper, and Yount, they all play hard. They know how to play the game, run bases, hit cutoff men. They hustle. And that's very important example setting for the young kids.
Good start for Cal Jr. And of course, he's played every inning of every game. Day games after night games, second games of double headers. They mean nothing. The last time this guy missed an inning, Willie Stargell, Luis Tiant, Ferguson Jenkins, and Woody Fryman were all still active.
783rd consecutive games, 7,093 consecutive innings. And he has played through some severe injuries, a terrible ankle injury. He just came playing right on through.
Thus far, Wegman's doing what he has to do to be effective. He's on the corners, he's at the knees, working the black. He is not overpowering. If he falls behind 2-0, 3-1, he hasn't got the kind of fastball to come back. But if he's spotting his pitches and getting ahead on the count, that's when he's effective.
Chuck Hartenstein, the pitching coach for the Brewers, they call him Twiggy, of course, over he's put on a little weight. Wants them to throw strikes, and he's also teaching a lot of these kids to throw breaking stuff and off-speed pitches when they're behind in the count. Can they stand the test of 162? And nobody really knows, but they have the makings of a fine pitching staff here. How far along are they right now?
At third base, Molitor has time and a 1-2-3 first for Wegman. They're ready to roar at County Stadium already. A few of them on their feet. We'll be back. You want a baseball atmosphere? Come to Milwaukee. This is a great sports town, period. Packers, Bucks, whatever. Packed house last night as the Bucks went up 1-0 against the 76ers in their NBA series. Plenty of bratwurst to be consumed along with the sponsor's product. Everything's in place except Bernie Brewer, who used to have a place of honor out there in center field, and after a Brewer home run, he would slide down into that giant mug of beer wearing his lederhosen. They removed him for some misguided reason, and his absence is truly felt.
They put that sound system in center field. Ken Dixon, who had trouble giving up the home run ball last year, has started again this year, gave up 4 solo shots to the Brewers last time he faced them. Will face Paul Molitor, they call him the Igniter. Robin Yount, third youngest player ever to get 2,000 base hits. Glenn Bragg, an outstanding young-looking hitter. He is so strong. Brock, then Rob Deere, Billy Joe Robideau, DH today. Cecil Cooper did last night. B.J. Surhoff, Dale Swain, switch hitter, and Jim Gantner, native Wisconsinite.
Molitor off to a great start. Leads the majors with 9 doubles. He was 2 for 5 last night. Here's a guy who's been through all kinds of changes. On and off the disabled list. He was on the DL 3 times in a 2-month stretch last year. He's played 5 different positions for the Brewers. Settled in now at third. Dixon's 1-1 for the year. It's in there, and it could be yet another 2-base hit for Molitor. He stumbles as he comes around first and gives up any notion of opening with a double as Gerhardt got it back in. He was thinking about it, but when he stumbled over the bag, that was it.
He took the little loop before he hit the first base bag, and then he hit a piece of turf. A divot shot up, and he couldn't make it. Dave Hilton, the first base coach, says, hold on up. He made that little loop. He was going to go. challenged the arm of Gerard, who does not throw well out in left field. I tell you, these people started out in the parking lot again. With the brats and the grills growing and the RVs, the recreational vehicles, they've been here since 8:30 this morning.
Dixon to Yount for ball one. At Baltimore on April 14th, Dixon was really rocked by the Brewers. He allowed homers to Molitor, Gantner, Yount, and Deere. Gave up 9 hits and 5 runs in 5 2/3. Molitor has stolen 6. He leads the Brewers in that department. There he goes. He's in there.
Terry Kennedy, not known for his throwing arm. He got a lot on the ball and got rid of it. But Robin Yount, the veteran hitting in the 2 spot, just destroyed his concentration. Watch Robin put the bat over the top of the ball, try and block the view, and perhaps that little decoy by Robin gave him that extra half a step to allow Molitor to be safe. Rocky Rowe down at second base with good position. Ripken over to make a quick tag. It is not just power hitting that has allowed the Brewers to get this kind of start. They've been doing things like this and then moving base runners to third. Yount does that well. They've been making great plays defensively.
The 1-1 pitch hit toward the hole and through. Molitor is on his way home. Murray cuts the throw off. 1-0 Milwaukee.
Coach has in mind, and Tom Trebelhorn challenged the arms in left, right, and center. Lynn has a sore shoulder also. You know, so often they say with a man on second base, as Molitor was to the number 2 hitter, give yourself up. I think that's a bad philosophy, and Tom Trebelhorn, with that positive attitude, will not stand there. He says, we don't give ourselves up. We hit the right side, but we hit for a base hit, and that's what Yount just did. And he can run at first base.
1-1. Greg Kosk, the plate umpire. Vic Voltaggio at first. Rocky Rowe at second. Larry Barnett at third. It was Kosk who invited Cal Ripken Sr. to leave the other night in Texas. Rip's first ejection as the Oriole manager. He was ejected 16 times, though, during his tenure as Weaver and Altobelli's third base coach.
Orioles with 5 players on the disabled list. Perhaps the biggest loss, Don Ozzie, their exceptional reliever. Cal Ripken Sr. also has Lacey out with a hamstring pull. He's got Tippy Martinez, his fine left-hander, trying to rehabilitate his shoulder problems after the rotator cuff surgery. So they're hurt. Hudler, another infielder, disabled. Mike Young, the switch hitter, and also some young talent with a damaged thumb, a Darryl Strawberry type injury.
1-1 pitch grounded foul, so 5 on the disabled list for Ripken. He saw his team open by winning 5 of 6, but they've dropped 8 of their last 11. Have feasted on Ripken's team during this streak, beating them 4 times. There goes Yount. Called strike 3, throw wild, and Burleson makes a fine play to stop it from going into center field. Yount has the stolen base as Bragg strikes out.
Kennedy comes out of the chute, didn't have a grip on the ball. He saw that Robin Yount had a good jump. So he knew he couldn't take a lot of time, didn't have a good grip, and Burleson made a good play preventing Robin Yount from going to third base.
Brock.
Tony Muser, the hitting instructor, third base coach, has tried to cut the swing of Brock down considerably. It's not as long as it once was. As Manny Motto with the Dodgers harped on that for a lot of years. Also, Muser's insisting that Brock go more to left field, left center field on pitches away.
Pulls this one, and Burleson can't get it. Yount is being sent home. It'll be 2-0 Milwaukee. 3 singles and a couple of stolen bases as they jump in front.
Saw the fastball side, the location away given by Terry Kennedy, and as the ball was thrown by Dixon, he took a little shuffle step to his right. He was actually moving to his right. They wanted the ball away. The ball was inner half of the plate. Burleson moved to his right. See him? He's leaning to his right. Good camera work, guys. Leaning to his right, and the ball sneaks to his left. Veteran players whose defensive skills have been cut down by lack of speed with age have to cheat a little more. Burleson got caught cheating. The location was not right by Dixon, and he got burned. Tony Arnold. Bullpen a little dry. They just have 4 people down there for the Orioles. Ready for Ossie. Tippy Martinez perhaps to come back. His career may be in jeopardy. Going with a 9-man pitching staff.
And now to compound his problems, Dixon faces Deere. Strike one, he committed himself. Hit a towering home run down the left field line last night off Scott McGregor, his 8th of the season. That leads the majors. Brian Downing of the Angels, Cal Daniels of the Reds, and Pete Incaviglia of the Rangers are all at 7. Check swing roller. Here's Ripken. Play at second. That's 1. On to first. Don't get it.
A lot is made of Tony Fernandez, the great young all-around shortstop, and Schofield is excellent, Sean Dunston, but I guess if I had to take any shortstop in baseball, glove, bat, and all else, I still take Ripken. Right now, Tony Fernandez, I might take a couple years down the road, or Sean Dunston. When you look at his power, the way he positions, he gets a good jump on the ball. His arm is so accurate. He's my man right now. One time it might have been Robin Yount. And I still love Alan Trammell. There are some beauties in this league. Some awfully good young shortstops.
And here's the man who perhaps leads the all-name team, Billy Joe Robideau. Ball 1. He's DHing today. Cecil Cooper, the veteran, did the job last night and had a couple of hits.
You would think with that name, he would be from the Deep South. Billy Joe.
There's Coop, and we forget some of the great years he had during his prime. Hit over 350 the year George Brett batted 390 in 1980 and kind of got lost in the shuffle.
You still see that big base hit he got to left field against the California Angels. He just stood in the batter's box saying, get down, line drive to left, drive in the game breaker.
Dixon falls behind Robideau, 3-0 with Surhoff on deck. Called strike to let the other shoe drop. Robideau is not from south of the Mason-Dixon line. He's a native of Massachusetts.
Not a pull hitter. He sprays the ball around. He's a gap hitter, left center, right center field.
There goes the runner. Ball 4.
Talking to the president and principal owner of the ball club, Bud Selig, one of the brilliant young minds in the game, who's really let Harry Dalton run the club and pretty much stays out of it. He does a lot of worrying, but he said they've run more this year already, including spring training, than he saw this team run almost the entire 8-10 years they've been around. They're Bamberger and Harvey Keene. They're both good managers, he said, but our team has got to be aggressive. The kids have got to keep their heads in the game and their feet in the game. Treblehorn's running them.
The young catcher, Surhoff, takes ball one. Dixon on the ropes in the last half of the first. And here's a drive toward the gap in right center. Back goes Sheets. Goodbye. Fans here cheeseheads. It's a moniker they evidently wear with pride, these natives of Wisconsin.
The dairy state. You know, there was a subtle wind shift since batting practice. The wind was blowing almost straight in from center field, and it has shifted now, blowing slightly out to right. And B.J. Surhoff went down and got a pitch that was down in the wing and hooked it into the bullpen. He's already, heck, the first 6 games he played, I think he had the game-winning RBI in 3 of them. B.J. Surhoff, they expect him to catch 80 games or so. Bill Schroeder hit a home run last night. He will catch a lot of the games, not necessarily a platoon tandem.
Swaim lost this one down the left field line. It'll be out of play. 5-0 Milwaukee. 3 singles, a walk, 2 stolen bases, and Surhoff's 3-run homer.
Rick Manning, another one of the veterans, not one of those who was on the Brewers American League Championship team, but he kind of keeps them loose on the bench, which is going to be very important as the pressure builds from the media on this young team. Of course, I don't know if it can build any more than it did when they were amidst of their tying streak. Dale Swaim's an interesting story in himself. Last year he played third base, made 26 errors there, 30 in 80 ball games. Riles went down, Edgar Diaz went down, they put him at shortstop. He's been brilliant.
Breaking ball for the called third strike. The Gopher bit Dixon 32 times last year. He's no stranger to it, and Surhoff got him in the first. It's 5-0 Brew Crew. Here you see why B.J. Surhoff might be J.D. Solinger's favorite major leaguer. Yes, he's the catcher in the rye.
Is that original?
No, our producer Ricky Diamond came up with it. But I would have stolen it if you hadn't called my bluff.
You can see the kind of slump Eddie Murray's mired in. Teddy Aguirre, who won his 4th, the only major league pitcher to be 4-0 major leagues, really turned Eddie Murray around last night. Breaking balls, and what a closer Aguirre is, huh? He struggled early. As soon as he saw blood in the 7th, 8th, and 9th, he threw harder and harder and just wiped good hitters like this out.
Here's the 0-2. Well, it was a chilly night, just as it's cold today, and Higuera couldn't get loose. Come back to that in a minute. Look at some of the other well-known names who are struggling. Joining Eddie Murray with a slow start. Deep, but very foul. Last night, Higuera couldn't get loose. Tom Trebelhorn told me before the game, the first 2 or 3 innings, his fastball was only 81, 82. 8th and 9th, around 90. 1-2 pitch to Eddie.
Murray, who in his own quiet way, and he doesn't talk very often, went through an injury-plagued season last year. Personal problems, deaths in the family. He had a bad hand. He wouldn't send him. Tried to play, cut down his swing.
Here's Gantner with a nice easy hop. And Wegman has retired 4 straight Orioles.
All on ground ball out, so he's got a little sinker going for him.
There you see the matchup, and a good one. Gubaza, who can throw 93, 94 against Jack Morris, and the Tigers with the early lead. Speaking of Detroit, they were 14-1 at this point in 1984 and eventually went to 16-1 before losing again. Lynn fouls it out of play, and of course Sparky's team went on to win the World Series over San Diego that year.
The other day in Chicago, when the Brewers were playing down there, the day that their streak was stopped, they had like 19 live interviews with players just prior to the ball game. Local media, network people, and Tom Treblehorn, who's been called John Treblehorn, he's been called Tablehorn. I mean, he's had all kinds of names hung on him. Nobody knows who he is. He said if they could withstand that pressure, that media crunch, I think we'll be okay the rest of the year. Although some people feel that could burn them out over the long haul, all that enthusiasm that was generated and every day. That's why it's nice to have the veterans and a positive manager like Treblehorn.
Well, they took a poll, a phone poll of Wisconsin residents before the season, outside with the curveball, and only about 25% of them could correctly identify the manager of the Brewers. Then 2 days ago, they went through the process again. His recognition factor had doubled. Half of them knew who he was. Down goes Freddie Lynn. First strikeout for Wegman.
Wegman can do about 3 different things with a fastball. That was the cutter. There's Andy Etchebarren, 2 former Orioles helping Treblehorn out. Larry Haney in the bullpen. Harry Dalton, who helped put the Orioles team together along with Frank Cashen years ago, then went to California, now with the Brewers. And I think Harry Dalton figures, hey, look, as successful a staffs as Etchebarren and Haney caught as catchers, now retired, they can teach our pitching staff something.
Slider for strike 1. Knight has cooled off a little bit. In his last 6 games, he's 2 for 20, and the average has gone from 513 down to 373. Hit hard, but to his left is Swain. That'll do it. To the bottom of the second at County Stadium. 5-zip Brewers.
You want to see how relaxed this Brewer team is? Watch Dale Swain. Gets a hard hit ball to his left off Knight. Keep your eye on him. Makes it routine. Who, me worry? Kid's made 1 error. Made 30 last year, as we told you.
So when you say he's got a bazooka, you're not necessarily talking about his arm.
Oh.
Gantner lines one into right, and it's in for a leadoff hit. Dixon being abused by the Brewers.
Yes, I did catch the bazooka line.
Molitor singled, stole second, came home on Yount's base hit in the first.
Molitor, who likes the ball inside part of the plate. That's what he got the last time up. Right now, there's a gap between Burleson and Murray. You may see some action again.
Not going on the first. Look at this. Check swing, and it's in there. Molitor wheels toward third. When you're living right, man, this is what happens, and they love it in Milwaukee.
It's interesting. First of all, if that pitch is down in the strike zone where it belongs, it's a ground. But watch Molitor's right elbow. It's a check swing, but you can see how he keeps the right elbow in, and what he was trying to do there, by keeping the right elbow tight, the barrel of the bat drags, and he was shooting the ball between Burleson and Murray. Now, granted, he checked his swing, and he did get a bad pitch up in the strike zone, but he was shooting that way, and even the check swing kept it going in that direction. It's going to be it for Ken Dixon.
His line in tomorrow morning's paper.
This is Ahmad Rashad in New York. And in Cleveland, the top of the second inning, Lynn Sakata leads off with this home run over the left field wall, his first homer since 1985. The Yankees lead in the bottom of the second, 1-0. Now back to Bob and Tony.
All right, Ahmad, and this is the line Ken Dixon will see in tomorrow morning's paper. What a horror story.
Scotty McGregor blocking him out as Ken Dixon falls behind the rest of the bench. Wants to just hide, and you know, he's got such an outstanding arm. Last year he gave up the home runs. Talking to Elrod Hendricks, the bullpen pitcher, sometimes the stuff is so good coming out of the pen, and then there are times when he has trouble. Talking about Ken Dixon, he doesn't finish his pitches off, they stay flat. Tony Arnold, who was a teammate, Calvin Schiraldi, Spike Owen, University of Texas, another Cliff Gustafson product, and there are abundant around the major leagues now.
He inherits the 2 runners aboard with nobody out, and as he warmed up, the PA system taunted him with the theme from Mission Impossible. They're already down 5-0 as Yount steps in. Ball 1.
Sinker ball pitcher who can get you the ground ball. He's always had excellent control through his minor league career. Doesn't walk many. Ray Knight is up tight at third. He may come home to save 1 run in the middle of the diamond. They're playing double play depth, trying to prevent a big inning.
This one finds the hole. Yount is 2 for 2. It's 6-0. And Molitor stops at second.
And folks, those are no mistakes. We saw Molitor check his swing, and Yount for the second time trying to go the opposite way, shoots the ball through the gap. Can you imagine seeing a Yount and Molitor and a Gantner do the kinds of things they've done already today, especially Molitor and Yount, to have young kids sit on the bench with Trevor Lawrence saying, guys, you watch them just like I do. I'm learning as much as a manager as you should be as a player. And Yount just shoots it through the hole. He's trying to prevent a double play, gets another base hit.
Braggs took a called 3rd strike in the first.
Too early to start the chant, break up the Brewers. They haven't done anything wrong yet this year, have they?
First and second, nobody out, and a swing and a miss. Look at Bragg's stance. Very widespread.
Well, he is so big. He's got a Mr. Universe body. He's built like Reggie Jackson and a little bit taller. Very strong, and Tony Muster feels to cut down his swing. He doesn't have to take a big stride. He can spread out, hit with his hands and his forearms and hammer the ball. He really tried to cut that big, long swing down a little bit.
They tell me, and off what little I've seen on film, DiMaggio had a very widespread stance. Barely took a stride.
DiMaggio, a strict pull hitter. Braggs was. They're trying to get him to hit more to the opposite way with more sliders now than there were then.
And here's a shot. Muser waving Molitor home. He's in there. 4 straight singles in the second. It's 7-0 Milwaukee. How long will it last? That's hard to tell. But they're savoring every minute of it. Not that guy.
Well, everyone's quite aware that the Eastern Division, American League, is not quite as strong as it was 2 years ago. Still some strong teams. There are weaknesses in almost every team's pitching staff. Some teams, because of age, other factors, injuries, are starting on a downward trend as far as ability. The Brewers are young, and they are going on an upward tack. How long they can stay in that direction remains to be seen.
The book now closes on Dixon, responsible for 7 runs. Long foul.
You know, there comes a time, and you can't tell a pitcher, but the way the Brewers are swinging, and they're all charged up, some pitchers are going to start pitching a little more inside to them. They're going to have to, and I mean inside off the plate, to move them off the plate or knock them down. See if that affects them. I'm not advocating it, but you've got to start doing it when they start swinging like this.
So are you predicting some Brewer brawls?
I don't know.
Breaking ball popped into shallow center. Burleson back, Lynn in, and Burleson has it for the first out of the inning.
Although I did see a game against the White Sox, Jose De Leon, the hard-throwing right-hander, and he must have brushed back 4 or 5 of the Brewers hitters. They just stood right back up there and continued to tap through the ball. So that didn't work either.
Deere grounded into a force play in the first.
He is becoming, not because he leads the league in home runs, that's one of the reasons, but his style of play about as popular as maybe the most popular player ever played here, Gorman Thomas. He challenges walls. He made a great diving catch yesterday in left field. Moved from right to left field this year because of Braggs.
And a check swing foul. Let's pause briefly here for station identification on the NBC television network.
Proud to call it home. WTHR Channel 13, Indianapolis.
You know, Tony, it's not only how well you play, it's who you play and at what point you catch them. For example, the Brewers began the season by sweeping 3 here against the Red Sox, but they never faced Clemens, Hurst, or Boyd. They get off to a good start. They've played a slumping Texas team 6 times during this streak. Baltimore having their troubles. Now, I'm not saying the Brewers haven't played wonderful baseball. They have. But the circumstances have allowed them to reel off this streak and begin to believe in themselves.
You still have to hit the ball, catch the ball, run the bases.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
They've been doing all of that. It's a matter of how long can they sustain it.
The point I'm making, it's sort of like your first few shots in a basketball game. Maybe they bounce around the rim and fall in. Could just as well have fallen out. You begin to get the feel. You're in a groove. It changes everything.
Well, there's no question over the long haul, it's going to be the pitching. They will have their slumps, and perhaps that will be the test. How resilient are they? Even great teams have those lulls where they go into a week 10-day tailspin. How soon will this Brewer ball club be able to right itself? And usually you right yourself with your pitching staff. And the pitching staff is young. Names that a lot of you fans have never heard of out of the Milwaukee area.
2-1 pitch.
I shouldn't say Milwaukee, state of Wisconsin. They had media day here yesterday. Tom Skybosh, the PR director, they had 175 people. It was a record. Even the great Braves team didn't have those kinds of crowds for the media. Hartenstein, Chuck Hartenstein, and Tom Trebelhorn. What he is saying is, we now have a 7-run lead. You just hold your spots. We're not running now to embarrass the opposition. So he wasn't giving a sign of Muser. He was just saying, hold your spots. Now, of course, 3-2, 1 out. There's a possibility he would go, but with Deere up, a strikeout guy, he may hold it again.
Deere fanned 179 times last year. Not going, and down he goes swinging. Tony Arnold spent 6 seasons in the Baltimore farm system before making it up for a cup of coffee last year and came out of spring training on the roster this time around. He's 28 years old, so a rookie, but not exactly a youngster.
I believe Don Ossie is to come off the disabled list within a few days, give or take some, but they don't know if he'll be ready to pitch. Shoulder problems. He worked so hard last year. The Orioles team last year was middle of July. They were within a couple of games of the lead. And boy, they did one of the collapses that was so unlike an Oriole team because they've always been so good the second half. Where do they go? 18 consecutive years finishing 500 or better. Their pitching staff were kind of the bellwether of pitching staffs in the major leagues. They were so good. That's fallen apart.
Well, they finished in the basement for the first time in the history of the franchise, and they were just un-Oriole-like in every phase. They played terrible defensively. And that perhaps was the most surprising aspect of all. Breaking balls swung on and missed. And in fact, both Earl Weaver before departing and Cal Ripken Sr. this year say, sure, we didn't pitch as well as we have in some past seasons, but we didn't pitch that badly last year. Our defense betrayed us, not only with errors, but with plays they failed to make that were scored as hits that prolonged innings. Arnold gathers himself, strikes out Deere and Robideau to end the inning, but 2 more for the Brewers, and we'll be right back after these messages from your local station. Tony, let's follow up on the point you were making earlier. This is the youngest pitching staff in terms of average age in the American League.
Number 15, Terry Kennedy.
Higuera won 20 last year, finished second to Clemens in the Cy Young voting. Nieves pitched the no-hitter earlier this season. The questions are Wegman, Chiardi, Birkbeck. How much can they get out of them?
Well, they've got the same kind of youth out of their bullpen. Mirabella just called up, who's about 34, a left-hander. But you look at the bullpen, Danny Plesac, a left-hander, has a chance, and some feel he may throw harder now than Dave Rigetti. But he's like 23 years old, and he is going to be an outstanding stopper. Chuck Krim, a sinker baller, reminds you of Roger McDowell. He's like 24, 25. Chris Boscio with that hard slider, he's 24. So throughout the staff, not just the starting staff, it's a bunch of kids, unless the mortality rate hits them. You know, a lot of pitchers' arms go down. They've got a chance to really be good. 39 years old, third youngest manager, Tom Trebelhorn.
1-2 to Terry Kennedy. He'll be followed by Sheets and Gerhardt. A look at the Brewer pen. Some of those young arms down there. Who's younger among the managers? Tom Kelly at Minnesota. And who would be the other? Bobby Valentine in Texas, I guess. Here's a high drive to right. Braggs drifts back and short of the warning track. He's got it.
Heck, Pete Rose is not officially retired yet. He's older, and he might be activated this year. You don't know that for certain. He's older than about 7 or 8 managers in the major leagues right now, isn't he?
Wegman has retired 7 straight as Sheets stands in. Curve for a strike. Wegman, 24 years old, was 5-12 last year, and his ERA was over 5 runs a game. Through his career, he's been the king of the no decisions. He had 15 no decisions last season. He's been staked to a 7-0 lead as he works here in the third, trying to go 2-0 this year. Took something off that one.
Wegman's first major league win came against this Orioles team in just his second start. That is something that Chuck Hartenstein will insist on. And it is difficult to get young right-handed pitchers especially to come inside the left-handed hitters. It's natural for a left-hander, the fastball tails in, but to get right-handers to throw inside or sometimes like that, which is going to be interesting, and it's a 7-0 ball game, and by no means is Wegman trying to hit Sheets, but they're coming inside, and I would think that the Orioles pitcher might start that a little bit too.
And the payoff. Just missed the outside corner, and that's the Orioles' first base runner.
One thing Cal Ripken Sr. wanted to do this year was try and get a little more speed in the lineup. Got Gerhardt there with Wiggins DHing. Hope he could get a running game going. But the way they've hit lately, some of his key people haven't been able to advance runners.
Gerhardt, a native of Tennessee, known as Gomer around the Oriole clubhouse. Now here we see Brock, and he's holding the runner with a 7-0 lead. Is that wise?
No, not at all. I think you want to cut the gap down. Gerhardt, who is basically a pull hitter, we're trying to get him to hit the opposite way. Terry Crowley, the hitting instructor, although Frank Robinson does a lot of great work in that area also, but they're trying to get him to go the other way. Protect the outer edge of the plate a little more instead of pulling off. You see what happens. He pulls the left shoulder out, a breaking ball high in the strike zone off the end of the bat. A couple years back, Ken Gerhardt had very severe hip surgery. At one time, he was an outstanding runner. Still is pretty good. It was almost a career-ending injury and surgery.
Breaking ball skied to right. Another put out for Braggs.
Designated hitter, Alan Wiggins.
Back to the top of the order for Wiggins. As you saw by the graphic a moment ago, Wegman doesn't walk many. He did lose Larry Sheets after being ahead on the count 1-2, but he averages fewer than 2 walks per 9 innings pitched. And with a 7-0 lead, he ought to come right after these hitters. He shouldn't nibble at all.
He's a left-handed hitter, doesn't pull the ball a whole lot, still holding him on first base.
Fastball fouled off.
Sheets is not a base stealer at first base. Not going to run. You're not going to hit and run. I'm sure if we asked young Tom Trebelhorn why, he would give us a reason why he's only on. I don't know what it would be. Even if you play behind him and cut the gap down, now Andy Etchebarren's going to move Rob Deere in left field.
Deere didn't see him. He hasn't budged. 1-2. Now Deere moves in. Is that
Milwaukee really breezing now, 7-0 in the 3rd inning against Baltimore. Detroit blanking Kansas City 4-0 in the 4th. The Giants on top of Atlanta 1-0 in the 4th in the National League. And the Cardinals and Mets, St. Louis leading New York 1-0 3rd inning. Gary Ward followed by Ron Kittle and then Len Sakata against Scotty Bales, and the Yankees leading 1-0. We're in the 4th. Ward struck out in the 1st inning. Bales has struck out 4. Fouled away. 1 ball, 1 strike. Well, the Yankees piloted by Lou Piniella, when you think about it. We're talking about the Pittsburgh connection with the Yankees. But of course, the Yankees are certainly well connected when they come here with Piniella. That's fouled away. Lou Piniella first came to the big leagues in 1968 with Cleveland. One and 2. 2-2. Scotty Bales holding on to a 1-0 lead. Ron Kittle on deck. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Bouncer to shortstop. Charging there is Julio Franco to get him.
Costas and Tony Kubek back in Milwaukee. We experienced some brief technical difficulties. You didn't miss much while we were away. The last half of the 3rd, Surhoff grounded out to Murray unassisted at first. Swaim took a called 3rd strike from Arnold, and now Gantner has just walked on a 3-1 pitch. So he's at first with 2 out, and Molitor, who has a pair of singles, steps in. 7-0 Milwaukee. 5 in the 1st, highlighted by B.J. Surhoff's 3-run homer. Then 4 consecutive singles to start the 2nd, and Chase Ken Dixon making it 7-0.
The 3rd is not yet completed, Bob, and every Brewer has been on base at least once, with the exception of Dale Swaim, who's been one of their hot hitters.
Is on deck. The runner goes, and Molitor pounds it down towards short. Ripken comes up with it and throws him out. So no runs, a walk, a man is left, and 3 complete at County Stadium. 7-0 Brewers. Teodoro Valenzuela Higuera. Don Humo, they call him, which translates roughly to Sir Smoke. And it was a fine bilingual interview you conducted with him and Juan Nieves before the game.
Teddy Higuera, born and raised, I think within about 100 miles of Fernando Valenzuela, they stay in touch with each other.
2-0 to Burleson, starting it in the 4th, followed by Ripken and Murray. You saw the graphic over Higuera indicating he's the only 4-game winner in the majors. Last night in Houston, Bill Gullickson of the Reds and Mike Scott of the Astros each were shooting for their 4th. Neither was involved in the decision as the Reds won in 11. And Charlie Hudson of the Yankees was denied his 4th win as the Indians won at home. 3-1.
Wegman started to have some control problems the last inning. It is cool. It is tough to get a grip on the ball and put spin on it. Your slider and curveball. That's why they've been given permission not to put the fingers in the mouth, but to blow on their hands on the dirt surface. So he starts struggling with control again. And all B.J. Suroff, the young catcher, wants. He's kind of a tough young guy. He has the leadership qualities. B.J. Suroff. He said, "Come on now, get ahead of this, throw strikes. We're ahead 7 runs." It is the thing that any catcher would say, veteran or young as Suroff is, it's a matter of getting the pitcher motivated to try and do it. If it's a mechanical problem, a loss of concentration, could be both.
As Ripken steps in case you're wondering, there have been 3 father-son manager-player combinations in baseball history. Way back, more than 70 years ago, Connie and Earl Mack with the Philadelphia A's. More recently, Yogi and Dale Berra, briefly with the Yankees, and now, of course, Cal Ripken Sr. and Jr. Hit on the ground toward the hole. Swaim has no play, although he does flag it down. It's the first hit for the Orioles against Wegman.
You just saw the strength as Terry Crowley, the hitting instructor, gives a little base running instructions to Ripken. It was a breaking ball. Slider looked like away, and Ripken just turned that top hand over and tried to hook it to the left side. Ripken perhaps hits best when he drives the ball to right and left center field. They were pitching him away, playing him up the middle, and yet he still hooked that ball to the left side. It's just a matter of time before this guy gets the bat going. Well, this, Bob, you know, swinging awkwardly as he did last year time with that sore hand, she told nobody about, changed his swing so and sometimes it's a while before it comes back. That happened to Willie Upshaw with a hand injury and a rib cage injury. 2 years, and he finally got the stroke back.
Wasn't it a persistent hand injury that really ended Roger Maris's career in New York and caused them to trade him to the Cardinals?
Fractured bone. Roger still played well, but he couldn't pull the ball, started going more to left field.
2-0.
Here comes Chuck Hartenstein. He doesn't like what he sees. 2-0. Walked Burleson. He also walked Sheets back in the 3rd. The slider was up to Ripken, that he grounded the left side, and Hartenstein spent some time with the Toronto Blue Jays organization as a roaming pitching instructor. He will have to be, I'm talking about Chuck Hartenstein, not only a mechanics genius with these kids who can go out of whack so easily, he's going to have to be the team psychologist as they have their ups and downs. So many of these kids have never really been battered about through their pitching careers in amateur and minor league baseball. It's going to be very important to Tom Trebelhorn.
Freddie Lynn is on deck as Wegman brings the 2-0 home. I know you're bashful about this, but since we mentioned Roger Maris, it's too logical a lead-in. Your book is out about Maris and the '61 Yankees, one of the greatest teams of all time. You were a part of it. Here's the 2-1, and it's fouled out of play. And the book is called '61, The Men, the Team, the Record. And I'll say it, though you won't, it is a fine look inside that team from an insider's point of view, and it also catches you up on what's happened with some of those players since they retired from baseball.
I did the research, 2 men on, nobody out. A fellow named Terry Pluto, outstanding baseball man and writer, wrote it out of Cleveland. But really, the guys who really wrote it were the team. Everybody I talked to, all we did was put their ideas down, and I think it turned out nicely. Terry Pluto did a nice job.
Brewers trying to take it to 15-1 and leading 7-0 in the top of the 4th. The 2-2 pitch again.
This is where the Orioles have really struggled on the road trip. They're 0-4 on the road trip now, and they've really had difficulty to get that one base hit to keep a rally going, but especially in close ball games, getting that base hit to knock a pitcher out. Like yesterday, Higuera, one base hit. Teddy Higuera might have been out of the ball game yesterday. He struggled early, and once he got in the groove, it was gone.
And the 3-2 pitch is rolled towards second. Gantner makes the play at second base. A lot of guys would have taken the sure out at first. He was able to get the force at second base.
So he keeps the force and double play situation in order. Cal Ripken may have had to slow down just a little bit to let the ball go through, and then he accelerated. Veteran players will do that. A younger second baseman might have said, hey, look, give him second and third. We got a 7-run lead. Now we're going to see the difference in the defense, as now with Freddie Lynn up, Brock will play behind Murray at first base.
You're talking about the Orioles' inability to get that one big hit to knock a pitcher out, to break a game open. So often early in the season when they've had the rallies going, it's been Murray and Lynn, their big guns up there, unable to come through. Lynn does this time, however. This is extra bases down the right field line. Lynn on his way for a double. Braggs has trouble with it in the corner, but Murray will stop at third. A run is home, and it's 7-1. I mean, they know that eventually Murray and Lynn are going to come through for them. If Lynn stays healthy, he'll drive in 90 or so. Murray better than 100. But it hasn't happened often in the season's first 2.5 weeks. Last year, Braggs had the lowest fielding percentage of any American League outfielder in almost 2 decades, since the days of Leon Daddy Wags Wagner, a notoriously nonchalant outfielder with the Indians. But he's improved a bit with the glove this year.
Braggs was only up near the end of the season, so there isn't really a great deal of statistics to go by. They like his throwing arm. That's why he's in right. I guess he's got average running speed at best, but they love his power. And there are a lot of rough spots yet. You just saw one.
No error is charged on that play. The runners would have been at second and third anyway. The real improvement defensively is one you mentioned earlier, Tony, Dale Swaim. This is a remarkable turnaround. He made 30 errors last year, playing mostly at third base. There were enough stats to make this comparison valid. He had the lowest fielding percentage of any third baseman since the turn of the century, since a guy named Germany Schaefer in 1902. Now here he is playing shortstop, which you could argue is a tougher position to play. Hasn't booted one yet.
That's the thing that's interesting about him, the way he's played at this point, Dale Swaim. He gets to a position where the hands don't have to be quite as quick, because the ball doesn't get to you as quickly, but the pressure is there of being in on every play. Relays, cutoffs, you obviously get more ground balls. You've got to be a little more acrobatic, throw off balance more often, from the hole especially, and he's handling it much better than he did third base.
1-2 pitch tonight. Ooh, he almost got him.
Ray Knight's had, as he calls it, a flood of mail. He said, I'm finding out, people are telling me, Mets fans, I guess, he thought, how stupid I am when I turned down between 800 and 900,000 with the Mets after being an MVP in the World Series, and took about 5 or 6 from the Orioles with some incentives. He said, they're telling me how stupid I am. He said, I guess I was.
That's not a play.
He's a professional hitter. They hung that tag. I remember Dave Anderson, great columnist from the Times, called Lou Piniella a professional hitter. They talk about Rance Mullix that way. That's what Knight is. He can anticipate location, pitches, change his stance, hit the opposite way, or pull the ball according to the situation and pitcher as well as anybody.
With Howard Johnson and eventually Dave Magadan, good-looking young left-handed hitter, at third, the Mets might or might not miss Knight statistically. but they will miss his presence and leadership in the clubhouse. He and Hernandez were so important last year. And Carter in his way as well, but there are different personalities on every team. For example, Carter and Hernandez. You could name each as a leader, but they have diametrically opposed personalities. Knight is the kind of guy who relates well to everyone.
But what you can't teach, and what Ray Knight's got, and he proved it when he replaced Rose at third base in Cincinnati, you cannot teach toughness. And he's got it. And that permeates the atmosphere of the clubhouse.
And he's battling Wegman here. Second and third, one out. Top half of the fourth, a run home to make it 7-1 Milwaukee.
You're talking about a base hit, 7-3. May get Wegman in trouble, get into that young bullpen. That's what Cal Sr.'s thinking about anyway. A career baseball man, two contrasting careers in these two dugouts. The young Tom Trevelorn, Ripken, who had to wait for his turn. Some thought he should have a job a couple of years ago. But Eddie Murray, perhaps, was his biggest supporter. Eddie Murray thought that he should have had the job even before they brought Earl Weaver back.
Back in the minor leagues around 1975, it was Ripken who first suggested that Eddie Murray become a switch hitter. He's been there with Eddie throughout his career, up through the minors, and then, of course, he was a coach under Weaver when Murray made it to the big time.
And not too unlikely anymore, he's now become a legitimate prospect. Billy Ripken at Rochester starting to play ball the last couple of years. I mean, playing like a major leaguer.
Wegman pulled the string and nearly screwed Knight into the ground.
All right, Bob, in Detroit, the Tigers' Alan Trammell hits this two-run homer over the left field wall, his first of the year off of Mark Gubiza. By the way, Dave Bergman has just homered, making the score 5-0 Tigers, the bottom of the fourth. Gubiza has been replaced by Steve Farr.
So a big strikeout for Wegman. His second of the day, after Knight fouled about a half dozen off. He showed him a pitch he had not seen in the entire at-bat and got him swinging.
There's an experienced hitter who looking for a minimum a sacrifice fly, and he couldn't get it. And now there's even more pressure on Terry Kennedy to get those 2 runs home and try and cut this gap. Stands at 6 runs now. Terry Kennedy saying, I just hope I can get through the first time through the league and learn our pitchers and the opposition pitchers. He said, I think I'll be all right. So right now, I don't know what they throw. He said, they're all telling me throws hard, but how hard is hard? It's got a sinker, but how much does it sink? He said, I've got to go around through the league at least one time before I know what's going on up with the bat.
Wegman trying to minimize the damage is ahead 0-2. Started off the mound, and Greg Kosk won't appreciate that.
Well, Wegman just, or rather, Suroff held it right there. They're trying to stop the young catcher, B.J. Suroff, from moving around behind the plate too much. He used to overshift. Now they've got him just shifting like they do to the outer third of the plate with the off foot. He used to take both feet, get him out of the catcher's box, get out of the strike zone, and it caused some wildness. So both Andy Etchebarren and Larry Haney have been working, say, okay, shift if you want, but not quite as extremely. He blocks pitches that many catchers can't even get to with his quickness. Like that. He's got a quick glove. North Carolina Suroff was a shortstop until they made him a catcher. I think it was his sophomore year. Outstanding runner.
Wegman was ahead of Kennedy 0-2. Now they count full. Second and third, 2 out. And foul back toward us.
Eddie Murray at third place playing some games with Wegman. Taking really big leads with Molitor way off the bag. Perhaps trying to get Wegman to stop his delivery, rattle him, get a balk.
Breaking ball, fouled off. So first Knight, and now Kennedy really making Wegman work.
Terry's father, Bob, of course, the former major leaguer, having a little fun out there with Al Rosen and Roger Craig with that San Francisco ball club. He's a front office person now.
A check swing, a fair ball. Here's Molitor, and they hang Freddie Lynn up. They score a run. Murray crosses the plate before the tag is made on Lynn.
That's one of the few mistakes you'll see Molitor make. One of the few they made this year. He had time on a check swing to go all the way across the line to get Kennedy. No run would have scored. He elected to tag him. Run crossed and counted.
Kennedy, the hitter, very slow-footed, so they probably could have made the long throw to get him. Instead, he sees Lynn coming down the line, and Freddie has the presence of mind to turn around, prolong the rundown, and in the meantime, Murray scores. Important here is that Murray starts digging hard for the plate. You can't really tell because you're looking at a slow motion replay, but he dug hard for the plate after he saw over his left shoulder that they were making the play on Lynn rather than across to first base. He realized that if he could get across before they made the tag, the run would count.
Bob, did it look to you like Paul Molitor at first thought he could just go step on third for a force out, and then all of a sudden it dawned on him, then it might have been too late to throw and get Kennedy? He still had plenty of time. Anyway, they give the Orioles a run, something they probably haven't given anybody all year long.
Yount, Braggs, and Brock in the last half of the fourth. Here's Ripken. And they retire Yount for the first time today.
How many times have we seen Cal Jr. make that play and from any angle to throw across the diamond usually ends up belt high and right over the bag? He has the truest arm among any shortstop in the game, I think. And when he wants to throw hard, he can rifle it. His arm is close to Sean Dunstan's. He's got the best in baseball, I think, now. That time, he just took his time and flipped it. Didn't exert himself.
Fair ball in for a strike to Braggs, who struck out and singled.
In the series in Baltimore, Braggs hit a ball with the infield back. It was hit so hard, Rick Burleson did not get his glove down in time and hit him on the shin. That's already, and this is a veteran infield on dirt and grass, not turf, folks, not artificial surface. Burleson never had a chance to react with the glove.
Tony Arnold trying to do two things. Keep it close enough so that the Orioles have some kind of chance to climb back into it, and also impress Cal Ripken Sr. and improve his standing on this pitching staff. One and two. And Braggs with his second base hit.
They want to get the ball inside with that upper body strength, the musculature of Bragg. They want to pitch him inside. They got him inside. And one thing Tony Muser, the hitting instructors, told Bragg, do not be afraid to get jammed. And he get it inside, and he said, if you muscle the ball, protect the outer edge of the plate, you get 20, 30 base hits, little flares. He said, all good hitters do. Just stay with the shoulder in and just try and drive it up the middle.
Brock has singled and popped to second. Asked to replace Steve Garvey in Los Angeles, and there's no doubt it wasn't just an easy angle for the media. It was true. The pressure of that assignment was too much for him. Tommy Lasorda tried everything. He babysat him. He cajoled, tried to build his confidence. He just never felt comfortable there.
He's got a much more conservative town where you can go 0 for 50 and the fans won't boo you here.
One on, one out, and a 1-1 pitch. You think guys wear this eye black sometimes for fashion rather than for function?
No.
I mean, this is a cloudy day.
Well, the sun peeped out a little bit earlier, and it does cut the glare. They keep that hitter's eye in center field. Don't sit any people there. But in day baseball, you talk to the Wade Boggs, the Don Mattingly. A pitcher that comes over the top throws out of the sky here. And that white sky, even though it's cloudy, It looks gray. It helps cut the glare just a little bit. It's tough to pick the ball up, although you wouldn't have known it in the first couple of innings the way the Brewers swung the bat. In day baseball, it's a tough ballpark.
But it looks cool, too. They check at third, and they say he went.
Crew chief Larry Barnett punches up the right hand. I said they don't boo players here. Umpires, they're like anybody else.
Right on the borderline, and they say he went. The 2-2 pitch. The runner going, and the throw through. He's in with the steal. Now they want to check down at third again. And Barnett says this time Brock did not go around. So the count is full, and Braggs has a stolen base. The third for the Brewers today.
I mean, Terry Kennedy had no chance. It was a breaking ball down. Braggs had a jump. He'd probably taken about 5 strides before Arnold released the ball. It's about like Lance Parrish with that Philly staff. What do you have, 16 consecutive stole off him? They're starting to work now and holding some runners on.
Shallow right field. Sheets toward the line. Braggs tags. Sheets makes the catch. McGlenn isn't going anywhere. We are, though. We're going to Ahmad Rashad in New York. Ahmad?
All right, Bob. In Cleveland, the Indians' Mel Hall singled home Pat Tabler to tie the score at 1-all. Then this throwing error by Yankee catcher Joel Skinner allowed another run. Cleveland leads 2-1, top of 5th. Back to you, Bobby.
And Ahmad, despite the fabulous start by the Brewers, they really haven't opened up that much daylight in the American League East. They're 14-1. The Yankees, who lost last night, 13-4, so it's just a 2-game lead.
There's a good chance, this is not a knock against the Brewers or anybody else, that the Yankees could end up winning this division by about 10.
Ball 1 to Deere. It's frightening to contemplate what kind of club they'd have if they had signed Jack Morris.
Well, and Ron Guidry, will he be back or not? It appears that way. But what if the offer isn't that good to him from the Yankees? What if he says, I'm not happy? What if they say, look, we're winning without you, Ronnie?
1-0 pitch to Deere. Kind of lost amid all the hubbub about the Brewers start. The fact that the Yankees, a couple of weeks, constitute their best start since 1949. Casey Stengel's first year as their manager. 1-2. That year, the Yankees won the first of an incredible 5 consecutive, not just pennants, but world championships. They won the pennant in the series 5 straight times between 49 and 53, as the transition was made from DiMaggio to Mantle. The 1-2 pitch.
You know, Scotty McGregor was talking about how the media has changed over the last 3 years. He said, you know, the Tigers changed that all. When they got off 35-5, it used to be they used to talk about the second half of the season, how that is the important part, and how the Orioles always played well in the second half, with the exception of last year, of course. He said now it seems to be the media hype, like the Brewers have got it wrong because they got a good start. And it said it all goes back, he thought, to that Detroit start.
Deere is gone for the second time today, so he's 0 for 3. He struck out twice, and we'll be right back after these messages from your local station. Bill Wegman takes a 7-2 lead to the 5th, and he'll face Sheets, Gerhardt, and Wiggins. Nobody beats the Cheeseheads. Well, only the White Sox have so far this year. They're 14-1. Very good.
When they had all those people meet them at the airport about 2 in the morning, they were calling these fans cheeseheads. The players started it, and you would think it would be derisive, but the people love it. Very good. That's one thing about cheeses, you can eat them.
Yeah. It was a little slow, but I got it.
Hey, I can get as corny as you can. Try not to.
Here's the 0-1 pitch. Wegman quickly ahead of Sheets. And there's one of the cheeseheads of the Swiss variety, apparently. Surhoff back for a look, but it's on the screen.
Surhoff has mixed in the off-speed stuff very well. You know, you would think of a B.J. Surhoff, who really hadn't caught a whole lot, 2 professional seasons in the Midwest League here, and then went to Vancouver, that they would call pitches from the bench. I believe in critical situations you'll see him look over, but they want him to learn his own kind of game. Call a series of pitches, call his own location.
Check swing base hit. Swaim was pulled towards second base for the pull hitting Sheets, and it went right through the usual shortstop's position. Folks, as you know, this telecast is presented by authority of Major League Baseball and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of Major League Baseball.
Of course, allowing Surhoff to call his own pitches, important for his development as a catcher. And it's also, he's gotten a lot of help when he's down in the bullpen not catching from Larry Haney. If he's on the bench, it's with Andy Etchebarren.
Pitch.
You know, some of the check swings we've seen so far from the Orioles, it probably means, not because Wegman's overpowering, that his slider is very late breaking. It looks so much like the fastball with that tight spin. You only see that little dot, and you can't see it as a hitter, that they start after like it's a fastball, and they check their swing, it's the breaking pitch.
Here's a drive to left, near the line. It's Deer and foul ground, and he makes the catch.
They are already saying of him, the Deer that made Milwaukee famous. What a reclamation project that was. Remind you of when Gorman Thomas was striking out in the minor leagues, hitting home runs, and Bud Selig didn't want to bring Gorman Thomas up, and the late Frank Lane said, I'll bet you, and he made a bet with Bud that he would hit so many home runs one year and lead the league, and Bud Selig had to pay off, and that's the kind of story with this guy. He said he won't ever hit in the major league. The Giants gave up on him.
They got him from San Francisco for a couple of minor league pitchers. Bud Selig, of course, the owner of the Brewers. Strike one to Wiggins. He's 0 for 2.
Bud Selig, the man who led the search committee, found Peter Ueberroth, finally made him the commissioner. Selig was also a very loyal man to Bowie Kuhn. Got a lot of input by Commissioner Kuhn to hire Peter Ueberroth.
Gets the called second strike. Sheets is at first with 1 out.
Brock playing behind Sheets at first base, closing the gap. There he is. He'll back off even more as the pitch goes on its way. They were talking about a play when the Brewers swept the series, 3-game series in Baltimore, on Wiggins that Dale Swan made. And Andy Etchebarren, who played with Gold Glove winner Mark Belanger, said, I never saw Mark Belanger make plays like that. That's how good the play was to get Wiggins.
He reaches for this one and pokes it foul. He threw Wiggins, who's very speedy, out from his knees after making a stop deep in the hole. It's possible that Wiggins thought it was through and eased up and wasn't going full tilt, but it's just another example of how Swaim has turned it around completely defensively.
Because when a team's going that well, you get a lot of overstatements.
This one's going to drop in, and the Orioles have runners at first and second with 1 out. Well, if somebody gets hold of one here, they're back in the game. Burleson is grounded out and walked. Earl Weaver says, I remember the day in August of 1960 when Cal's wife went home to have our shortstop. A bit later, she also had the kid who might wind up being their second baseman, Billy Ripken. Burleson skies it to shallow center. Yount is coming in and calling, and he's got it.
Well, Burleson is so important to this lineup as long as he keeps hitting in the second spot. We've told you how he has struggled, and basically what that means is it puts so much pressure on your 3-4 hitters because they're coming up more often than not with 2 outs. Wiggins has been fairly hot over the last half dozen games. If Burleson gets hot, you'll see Ripken and Murray, although Rip is leading the league in RBIs, but you see them coming up with no outs, one outs more often. But his bat's got to get out. I'm talking about Burleson's.
Called strike to Ripken. When Cal Jr. was born in 1960, his dad was playing for Earl Weaver in your hometown, Appleton, Wisconsin, for the Appleton Foxes. For a called strike 2, 0-2.
You know, B.J. Surhoff is really smooth behind the plate. He is quick, he's agile, we told you about that, but he kind of gets some pitches already, and he's young, and usually it takes a guy a long time to press the ball like a Bob Boone or a Carlton Fisk. He doesn't jerk balls. I mean, he very subtly and smoothly kind of brings the ball back to the outer edge. Call it framing, as they do in baseball jargon.
They wanted to waste that last one, and you saw Surhoff set up on the outside portion of the plate. Ripken wouldn't chase it. Now Wegman comes back, 1-2. Curveball got him.
Just keeps fighting.
The Orioles strand 2, and Milwaukee has that 7-2 lead in the middle of the 5th. Well, with one of Miller's stable of sports luminaries now on your screen, it's appropriate to remind you that we'll be selecting the NBC Miller Lite Player of the game at the conclusion of this contest. The sort of tasty treat is he offering us.
Looked like shrimp.
And there's his usual position at the ballpark.
And perhaps we ought to be honest. We've been giving so much credit to Andy Etchebarren and Larry Hayne. It was really Bob Uecker who sent B.J. Surhoff out to the gravel pit to his Bob Uecker's school of pass balls and really taught the kid. New pitcher now, the left-hander comes on. Mike Kinnunen. Find many names that have 4 N's in them.
You know, I spend much of my life just looking through telephone directories, voter registries, to see how many names have 4 N's in them. And that is a truly interesting observation. It's quickly ahead, 0-2 against Robideau. Kinnunen apparently oblivious to the chilly temperatures, working in his shirt sleeves. It was 46 at game time with a brisk breeze blowing. Called strike 3. Let's check with Ahmad in New York. How you doing, buddy?
All right, Bob, doing just fine. In Detroit, Kansas City's Bo Jackson, who struck out 14 times in the last 7 games, takes Jack Morris into the upper deck at Tiger Stadium, his 4th homer of the year. However, Bob, the Tigers lead 8-1, top of 6.
And when Bo Jackson hits him, they don't scrape the back of the wall on the way down. I mean, they are in those bleachers and plenty deep.
All you got to do is listen to Sparky Anderson, who talked about his 465-foot home run when he broke his bat. Then did a 2-hopper routine to short and beat it out. Sparky has already said he's never seen an athlete like that.
Of course, Sparky has said many things. The 1-1 pitch. What was it he said about Mickey Mailer? He said there isn't a pitching staff in baseball that wouldn't have a spot for Mickey Mailer. And 2 weeks later, the Tigers released him. 3-1 to Surhoff, who had a 3-run homer in the first and then grounded to Murray his 2nd time up.
Kinnunen originally signed by the Minnesota Twins, spent a brief period of time with them. know about him. He apparently features a lot of breaking balls. Does not throw real hard.
Fredland in center field. 2 out in the Milwaukee fifth. A couple of years ago, the young infielder Chris Pitaro. Sparky spent all of spring training raving about him, overstating his virtues. And Pitaro was back in the minors before long. But, you know, Sparky admits that with a smile. He says, hey, I'm just trying to give you guys something to write about and talk about on the air. I have 2 jobs. I manage a team, and I also promote baseball. And he does both well. Swaim is a switch hit. Moves over to the right side against Kinnunen and takes a ball.
Sparky also put that rule in with the local media in Detroit. He calls it his 24-hour rule. He has the right to retract any statement he makes and change it within 24 hours. So you better wait till you write it, before you write it. The Brewers' bats have quieted down since the 2nd inning. The fans have quieted down also. Remember, as growing up in high school here, when the Braves came in from Boston, how they just drew people year after year in this small market, less than 1 million people at that time in the city. They were drawn over 2 million for 6 years, and then the people they call the carpetbaggers picked it up and moved it to Atlanta. Bud Selig went to all the winter meetings. Like the year they got this ball club, Bob, the equipment truck from Arizona was on its way to Seattle and had to make a right turn somewhere in Idaho, I believe, or Utah. Kept the same uniform, and somebody said, what are we going to call them? And Selig said, why don't we call them the Brewers? That's what the minor league franchise was calling for many years, AAA team.
Swaim has fanned 3 times today against 3 different pitchers, Dixon, Arnold, and now Kinnunen. And we bring you now another edition of Characters of the Game. Through the years, baseball, like almost every other sport, has become more scientific. It's analyzed more closely. The technology plays a larger part. But when you get right down to it, what's it supposed to be? Fun. And I don't think it's any more fun any place, including Wrigley Field in Chicago, than it is here. I mean, especially when the Brewers are playing anything close to good baseball. The atmosphere in this city and in this ballpark is just perfect. You come out here and you know you're going to escape for 2 or 3 hours and enjoy yourself, and that's what the experience is supposed to be about.
Well, the local burghers, the German population, and you said it in a lot of words, but they would say Gemütlichkeit.
Huh?
I don't think it has a literal translation except what you just said about all the fun things and the happiness, the way they treat you here. Gemütlichkeit.
Yeah. No Gemütlichkeit so far today for Eddie. He's 0 for 2. His team trails 7-2, and now he wears an 0 for 3 collar. Brock takes it unassisted.
Eddie Murray, somewhat unhappy man last year when Edward Bennett Williams, the owner of the ball club, apparently said some things that were taken out of context, were written as if they were to criticize Murray off the year last year that the team had. Eddie Murray at one time apparently requested a trade, was very unhappy. He never let it on that he was playing with an injury. There's Frank Robinson to the left, who said,
Brock again retires Lynn as he did with Murray.
Had a long talk with Frank before the ball game. He's the first black manager, and asked Frank about frustration, not getting another chance, and blacks not coming in the front office. He said, I don't know if frustration is the right word. He said disappointment. He said, I feel disappointed, not just for me. He said, I know it's frustrating for a lot of whites who really believe that there should be more blacks in front offices coaching and managing. He said, I'm so disappointed. He said, I'm not bitter. He said, I've seen it before, growing up in the minor leagues as a kid. He said, I was disappointed before. He said, every time there's a clamor to bring somebody into the front office, and then it cools down. He said, this will pass too.
Wegman breezes through the 6th with 3 ground ball outs. Tony, the inning ended so quickly you didn't really have a chance to finish your thought, but there's Robbie, who managed the Indians and the Giants, and in fact was the manager of the year in the National League in 1982 when they were in the pennant race until the final week of the season.
Well, the key word in everything Robbie said to me was disappointment. And when you look at the records of Maury Wills, Larry Doby, Frank Robinson, the two places he has managed, the managers that replaced them after they were fired, in almost every case, had a worse record than they did. And in most cases, they stayed around a little bit longer. Will it change? He hopes so, but he said, I said it before, I've seen it before, it'll cool down, but I don't think the Benjamin Hooks and the Reverend Jacksons will let it subside this time.
Well, some are so resigned to the situation that Bill White, former Cardinal first baseman who's now a broadcaster with the Yankees, said this week, and he said it twice, very flatly, this is already dying down and nothing is going to be done about it. He said, I repeat, nothing. Gantner is the leadoff man here against Kinnunen in the last half of the sixth. On the other hand, White himself said that he had no interest in being a manager or front office person, and he has had some feelers in that direction in the past. A guy like Joe Morgan was offered the Astros job, but felt as if he had a lot of business interests and did not accept the offer there in Houston. That's before Hal Lanier was hired.
Well, the Reverend Jesse Jackson apparently has met at least one time for certain with Commissioner Peter Ueberroth, and Reverend Jackson came away from the comments I read with a good feeling. He said, this is a man who is going to force change, or cajole the owners at least to make the changes, so that's a feather in Commissioner Ueberroth's hat.
A soft liner is grabbed by Ripken for the first out in the last half of the sixth. Here's Molitor, who's 2 for 3, pair of singles, and he grounded to short. Molitor holds a World Series record. He had 5 hits in the first game of the '82 series against the Cardinals in St. Louis. Several players had 4 in a World Series game up until that time, but Molitor managed 5.
Arnold did a nice job for Cal Ripken Sr. Kennan's doing a nice job, and of course, some of the people down in the bullpen know their jobs might be on the line when Ossie comes back, if Tippy Martinez comes back. Brad Havens, a left-hander with outstanding stuff down at Rochester. If he gets his act together, he could be back. Another double.
Third hit of the day from Molitor. Heads for second base, his 10th double of the season. He leads the majors in that category.
Paul Molitor had the Tommy John operation. His throwing elbow blew out, had the tendon removed from his left wrist. Took him a long time to rehabilitate. He's had other injuries. He plays so darn hard. Came out of the University of Minnesota. Like Robin Yount, very little minor league experience. But they had to kind of hold Molitor back on the head-first slides and how hard he plays. Try and save him some of those injuries.
Strike one to Yount with Braggs on deck. Brewers lead at 7-2 as they bat in the last of the sixth. They got 5 in the first, 2 in the second. The Orioles scored twice in the fourth.
There was thoughts, I don't know how seriously, the front officer, Tom Trebelhorn, that when Riles went down, what a wicked breaking ball from Kinnunen. Riles went down, and Edgar Diaz, who's an outstanding shortstop, that Yount might be moved back to shortstop. I don't know how serious it was, but his arm, his shoulder now is getting a lot better. They don't have to worry about that the way Swaim's played defensively.
Molitor at second with 1 out. Called strike 3.
It appears that Greg Kosk has widened his strike zone. When Cal Ripken was up, he called one inside that Ripken turned on him, and then he called one way outside. wasn't that bad. It's almost the way Terry Kennedy caught it. He kind of gave and pushed it almost out of the strike zone, but that ball was a strike. That was a good call. And I know our center field camera, Doug Harvey once told me, don't umpire from the center field camera. The angle's not true, but that looked like a good pitch.
Strike one to Braggs. Kinnunen has faced 6 hitters, and he's got 3 strikeouts since coming out of the bullpen. He's the 3rd Oriole pitcher today. Well hit, right center field. It drops in front of Lynn. Molitor motors home. It's 8-2, an RBI for Braggs.
Something the Orioles could have used a couple of times in this ball game. Several times last night. Some hitting with runners in scoring position, but especially 2 outs with runners in scoring position. And the Orioles have been awful at it. The Brewers are doing a good job at it. A good pitch, change up, down low, almost looked like a fork ball or palm ball with a downward tumbling action, and he just serves it out there.
So Braggs is 3 for 4, and the competition for the player of the game, it's more complicated. Molitor's had a big day, so is Yount. Throw in Braggs. Surhoff a 3-run homer. Wegman has pitched well. If the Brewers hold on, they'll be 15-1 and go for their 16th and 17 tries tomorrow, with Mike Birkbeck pitching for them against Mike Flanagan of Baltimore.
Hale goes down to Barnett. Right hand pops up.
Braggs was barely a step off the bag. Are umps affected by human nature? When the score is 8-2 and it's a cold day, do they widen the strike zone a little bit, try and move the game along?
They will tell you they don't, but I don't think they can help it.
That took a wicked hop, but Ripken just stayed with it and made it look easy. And the side is retired. We'll be right back after these messages from your local station. That doesn't exactly read like an Earl Weaver quote. This is the way Trebelhorn reacted.
Perhaps more like Mr. Sunshine Chuck Tanner.
I'm rather drained, said Trebelhorn. Kennedy is the leadoff man, and Swaim drifts back and makes the catch.
You talked about his identity crisis. Nobody knew who he was. When they went on the winter caravan here, they went to Madison, the state capital, and the bus driver left him behind. He forgot about him. Made a U-turn halfway down the highway, went back and got him. First time they made a plane trip this year. On the manifesto that the stewardess had, he was listed as Tom Troublewarn.
Troublewarn.
Troublewarn. He hasn't gotten any respect until the 13-game streak.
Well, someone saw something in him early. As a 22-year-old catcher playing in the Northwest League in Bend, Oregon, as Sheets spanks this one into right for a 1-out hit, and he's now 2 for 2 with a walk. Trebelhorn was playing for Charlie Silvera, who some fans might remember as Yogi Berra's backup catcher during the 50s in New York. So Trebelhorn is playing for Silvera when Charlie takes ill. And Silvera says to the 22-year-old kid, you manage the team till I get back. And Trebelhorn was flabbergasted. He said, me, I'm only 22 years old. He said, no, you're going to be doing this for a living someday, so you might as well get the practice. And while Silvera was on the sidelines, Trebelhorn was 4-0.
He owes a lot, not only to Harry Dalton and Bud Selig here, Trebelhorn does, but to Rene Latchman, who insisted that he come up and coach for him 1 year.
Gerhardt grounds one down to Molitor. That's one. Can they turn it? You bet. 5-4-3 to put an end to the Baltimore 7th. Starting today, we're again pleased to bring you our 7th inning stretch feature with a look at some of baseball. It's 7th inning stretch time in Milwaukee, and that means only one thing. It is time for an American classic. The bratwurst dipped in red sauce, smothered with sauerkraut, lathered with golden brown mustard. Now, Mr. Kubek, this is for you.
Let me tell you, folks, what a bogus fraud this guy is. I told him about these things. When I used to, as a kid, my dad used to take me to Old Borchard Field where the Brewers played. We used to eat these. Told you about them when I first worked with you 3-4 years ago. And all of a sudden, you're getting free brats, free sauerkraut, free sauce. You have freezers full of it. Because you pretended you discovered them. They are good.
This is the sort of thing that makes me proud to be a citizen of this great country.
You're going to claim citizenship in Milwaukee shortly.
Here's the guy who owns the town. Leads the majors with 8 home runs. Hitless today, has struck out twice. Kinnan's 1-1 pitch, fastball on the inside corner.
You forgot the other part of the tandem with the brat and the sauerkraut.
What's that?
A little brew, which I know you do not touch.
Certainly not during the broadcast.
They've almost got a shift on. You can see Burleson at the top of your screen for Deere. He hit one the other day that they're still talking about. Remember, there have been strong people. Of course, Henry Aaron played here. Guys like Joe Adcock, Gorman Thomas, he hit a ball in the left center field into the wind that almost cleared the bleachers. We're talking about Rob Deere. Some think for him it's feast or famine, as it was at times for Gorman Thomas. Home runs or strikeouts. He had 30 home runs, drive in 80-some runs last year.
33 of the former, 179 of the latter. And his 3rd strikeout today. 33 homers, 179 strikeouts in 86. Trebelhorn knows what you get with Rob Deere. Here's another of his statements.
He is so positive. He's got a rack of motivational tapes that he not only listens to, but he preaches.
Fred Lynn's going to be there, and that takes care of Robideau.
They're talking about the lack of respect for Trebelhorn, or again, that identity crisis. When he put on his baseball uniform, and they made a manager last September, interim for like 3 games, the spelling on the inside of his uniform, so he could identify them, was Tablehorn.
Surhoff, check swing, it's off Kinnan's glove and right to Ripken. So score at 1-6-3. Nobody's misspelling his name anymore. The Brewers are on their way to a record of 15-1.
Quiet and eat your broth. So behind the new pitcher, Chris Basile, a lot of changes by Tom Trebelhorn. Rick Manning goes to center field for Yount. Gantner moves from 2nd to 3rd. Molitor leaves. Juan Castillo goes at second base. Tom's brother Jim, they played against each other last week. He goes to first base. So Surhoff, Braggs, Deere stay in the ball game, as does Gantner, but he changes positions. Chris Basile with that hellacious slider. Throws pretty hard, but boy, his slider really is something.
Top of the order for Baltimore as they trail 8-2 in the 8th. Wiggins, Burleson, and Ripken. You mentioned Jim Paciorek down at first. His brother, well-known player Tom Paciorek, with a lot of clubs, Dodgers. Ground ball up the middle, and here's Swaim to his left. That could be his first error of the season. Rule at E6, and another look.
Chris Bosio tried to kick at it and said, now let it go. Swaim's caught everything in sight to this point. Wiggins, left side with that speed, no chance to recover and throw him out.
To Burleson. Started to talk about Jim Paciorek. His brother Tom was with the Dodgers in Seattle, the White Sox, the Mets. Now with Bobby Valentine, his old buddy in Texas. But there's a third brother, John Paciorek.
He's in the record books, isn't he?
Yep. He preceded both Tom and Jim to the big leagues. I think it was 1963 with the then Houston Colt 45s. And John Paciorek played in one major league game, went 3 for 3. He has a lifetime batting average of 1,000.
I believe he had some back problems. His career couldn't continue. Now, Jim Paciorek is very, very valuable. He, of course, made a great catch in left field. Juan Nieves no-hitter. He can play third. He's playing first today. He caught batting practice. He'll be their number 3 catcher with his 24-man roster. So Jim Paciorek, like Clint Hurdle, several others with the 24-man roster, can, because of their versatility, can have a long career.
Burleson hits one down the right field line, which is trouble if it's fair, but a foul ball.
You know, Trebelhorn doesn't sit still. Even the game they lost, when it was 7-1, a runner got to third base with less than 2 outs, and he brought in Robin Yount to play the infield. And he said, hey, look, someday this play may come in very handy for us. We worked on it in spring training. Like today, he made a lot of changes, give some guys a rest. Not necessarily to give them a rest necessarily in this cool weather, but to get the Pacioreks and Castillo's feet wet. He's not afraid to try things, as evidence in that first inning when he ran 3 times in the first inning.
Burleson's out of there. He went around.
That's that sliding slider. It is a good one.
Burleson jawing at Greg as he leaves.
Suroff sits on the outer third of the plate.
Oh, yeah, he went for sure.
You know, what he might have been saying, though, is not did I swing. He might have said, wait a second, that ball did something a little silly. I thought it was a slider when I first saw it, but the way it went down at the speed of a fastball, it's another one of those split-fingered fastballs they throw in the mid-80s. Which any physics professor would probably tell you is an impossibility when you spread those fingers to have it come that fast.
Ripken with an infield single in 3 trips. Wiggins at first with 1 out.
There's another funky swing. Looked like he was chopping wood. The Brewers have an award. I don't know if the Orioles do. Brewers have an award with the worst swing in any ball game. They give him a little red rubber bat they hang on the locker for the funky swing of the day. Robin Yount won it yesterday. I don't know if the Orioles have got one for Ripken after that baby, or Burleson before him. Look at how agile that kid is. That is a pitch that many catchers would have to back in. Remember now, he was a shortstop, B.J. Suroff, so the constant squatting has not yet gotten to his legs. There are catchers like Yoki and Roy Campanella, Thurman Munson. That's the guy that Andy Etchebarren says Suroff reminds him most of with his quickness. Maybe he won't lose the spring in his legs.
The 1-2 is a shot to short. Swaim gets 1 to Castillo on the first. 6-4-3, and that does it. Outs away from 15-1. So that's the lineup next Saturday. Expos and Mets with Vin and Joe. Tony and I will be at Wrigley. Padres and Cubs. It hasn't been a good day for Swaim. He made his first error of the season, and he struck out 3 times.
It will be a lot easier with an 8-2 lead after this game's over with.
In comes Knight. That's the first out of the last half of the 8th. You know, earlier, I just want to make sure no one misunderstood what I said. I said the atmosphere here at County Stadium is as good as any place in baseball, including Wrigley. I didn't say it was better than Wrigley. It's just a tie for the top spot. Here, Wrigley, Fenway, you know, the old classic places where they have a real baseball atmosphere. Gantner goes the opposite way. In there, extra bases, ground rule double, bounced into the stands.
The Brewer team's in one of those streaks where almost every time they swing the bat, they find a crack in the defense. They've had bad swings, check swings. They found holes right from the start of this game. Remember when Molitor in the second inning checked the swing, found a hole through the right side.
Now here's Jim Pechorik's first at-bat of the day.
You don't think Juan Castillo is hoping that a rally starts up right here? He's hitting in the cleanup spot. He probably never did that in San Pedro's, the Dominican Republic, on his Little League team. He wants a crack with the bases jammed, Castillo does.
2-0 to Pechorik. You understand that disclaimer I threw in there, Tony. We don't need those bleacher bums on our case when we get to Wrigley next week.
As soon as you realize we're in Chicago next week and the game may be televised there, you copped out is what you did, pal.
Now, you know how I feel about Wrigley and Harry Carey leaning out of the booth in the 7th inning singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game."
And if we had been going to Boston next week, you'd apologize to the Fenway fans. You cover your tracks, don't you?
In baseball, unlike romance in other areas, a man is permitted several true loves. Pechorik is on, and Manning will get a chance.
Number 28, Rick Manning.
Manning's been in the big leagues a long time, first with Cleveland, now Milwaukee. Last year, when it looked like the Red Sox might clinch against the Brewers, they actually wound up doing it against Toronto. But Manning, who'd been in the big leagues a long time without ever getting the championship ring, said, "I wonder if the Red Sox would mind if I just ran over and jumped on the pile to see what it feels like." Well, just maybe he'll get a chance unexpectedly in Milwaukee.
Well, he's a nice fourth outfielder to hang around. You know, if you want to rest here, there's a little injury, or when you rest Robbins' arm after 162, you can get a little tired. Certain really tough right-handed pitchers, you know, you don't want to embarrass a Glenn Braggs if you get against a Mike Witt with that great curveball. You might want to put Manning out there. Plus, he's another guy, never realized his potential with the bat, but he's an outstanding outfielder.
Kennedyn's ahead of him 0-2. He wants a new ball.
And again, he's the kind of guy that Harry Dalton wanted to keep around because, the simple phrase, he knows how to play the game. He'll set a good example for the kids.
Breaking ball low. Second, Pechorik at first, 1 out, last of the 8th, 8-2 Milwaukee, and 2-2 to Manning with Braggs on deck. The Brewers claimed this game as their own right off the bat. 5 in the first against Ken Dixon. They chased him with 2 more in the second. They've been on cruise control since then.
One that may have cracked it open, B.J. Sirleaf, 3-run home run.
Eddie Murray makes the play on Manning's chopper. The runners move up. And here's Braggs, who's 3 for 4, and a chance for a couple more RBIs. But first, Ripken Sr. to the mound, and he's going to make a move.
He's had Mark Williamson, the right-hander, warming up in the bullpen. I guess he's going to go that way. That can play havoc with your bullpen. When you get your starter knocked out so early, you don't want to overwork that pen. And it is short right now, the bullpen for Ripken, with Ozzie and Tippy Martinez out.
So as Williamson comes in, we'll break away for just a moment. Don January, Gene Littler are among those participating. Chichi Rodriguez, Sam Snead, Lee Elder, they'll all be there. Liberty Mutual, legends of golf, coming up after baseball today on NBC. Williamson is the new pitcher. Braggs, who has 3 singles and a stolen base today. First base open, and Juan Castillo on deck. Tony, you've been praying for the kid to get a chance with the bases loaded, and I'm sure they'll work carefully to Braggs here. That's ball 1.
There's Juan. No, not a shortstop or middle infielder from San Pedro de Macorís, but he's close. San Pedro, Dominican Republic.
A shot, but Ripken is in front of it.
He eats infielders up. Braggs does. Hits it so hard.
That baby was crushed, but Rip throws him out, and we will go to the 9th. 8-2 Milwaukee. To finish the job for Tom Trebelhorn, here's the former Red Sox Mark Clear.
He's got that pitch they call the cleaver. Part of his name and part of that wicked curveball that just scares right-handed hitters to death, even good ones. Throws pretty hard. Last year they started using him in situations, not as a closer. Had a good year. Becomes somewhat of a setup man for the left-hander Mark Plesac. Also can close.
What do you think about an MVP? You got Molitor with 3 hits, one of them a double. Braggs had 3 hits, stole a base. Molitor also had a stolen base. Surhoff had the 3-run homer. Wegman stands to be the winning pitcher.
Well, you could split hairs and make it a lot of different ways, but I like the way Molitor triggered most of the stuff early. And, of course, he was helped by Yount moving him along twice, but Molitor kind of set the tone of the game, and he lived up to his nickname, the Igniter. Getting on base, stealing a base, getting on in the second, coming on to score, doubling, scoring, walking. So, to me, Molitor's done a job.
And far be it from me to ever disagree. As Murray grounds one foul, and so this week's NBC Miller Lite Player of the Game is Paul Molitor. Miller Lite is happy to present a check for $1,000 in his name to the National Multiple Sclerosis Society.
Add a qualifier. Don't get hung up like we did in Wrigley Field with that great performance by Ryan Sandberg a few years ago.
Oh, man. Murray was paralyzed by that one. He watches it drop into the strike zone for strike 2. It goes without saying that's unless the Orioles rally here.
You know, hitters with this kind of pitch, they get almost like vapor locked, like your car does. You can't move. It just paralyzes you. You start, boop, everything locks. The wrist locks, and you can't pull the trigger. It's so wicked. Larry Barnett's gotten a lot of the Bronx cheers so far today.
He looks comfortable down there, doesn't he? He looks like a man who will be very happy when this one is concluded. The 1-2. Fastball hammered foul.
Came into this game just 6 for 34, Bob. He's 0 for 3 now. He scored a run. This slump continues. He's so far out in front of every off-speed pitch. End of the bat, he's pulling him foul. He's trying to stay aggressive, and yet he keeps telling himself, I'm sure, like every hitter who's been through this, and he's greater than most, wait back, wait. But he's still way out in front.
We mentioned that the injured hand played a big role in those career lows in '86. Called strike 3. He knew it. He doesn't argue.
There was the vapor lock again.
He's 0 for 4. He began the day hitting 179 with just 1 homer.
That ball started perhaps a foot outside, maybe more. And Eddie just about gave up on it, just kept biting and came off to the middle of the plate. Let's see where it starts. There it is, right on the outer third of the plate. Started outside, he gave up, and just kept biting. What you call your normal backdoor curveball.
Lynn has a double in 3 at-bats.
came in with only 1 hit in his last 19 at-bats and 3 for 34. That's over the last 10 ball games, not including this, of course.
It's softly down the right field line. Bragg sprinting over, and he makes the catch. Good play by Glenn Braggs.
This is an interesting thing. When he plays the outfield, they are trying to teach him to run hard. Now, his average speed may be a little bit better, but when he goes after the ball in the outfield, it looks like he keeps his eyes glued to the ball and doesn't run fast.
They come to their feet at County Stadium and out away from 15-1. Knights 0 for 3. Murray's problems, Lynn's problems. Knight, after a sizzling start, is 2 for his last 23. So the heart of the order is struggling. 0-2. And that's why the Orioles are 1 strike away, at least it's one reason why, from their 9th loss in their last 12 after winning 5 of their first 6 to begin the season. To Pachorik, 15-1. The entire team out of the dugout and onto the field. Burt Beck against Flanagan tomorrow as they try and match the start of the '84 Tigers, who won 16 of their first 17. There's Cecil Cooper. He was there for a title in '82. We'll be back.
Official totals from the ballgame. Baltimore 2 runs, 5 hits, no errors, and 4 left on base.
Wegman picks up the win. He's 2-0. Dixon, who took an early shower of the loser, he's 1-2 for the season. They call them the Cheeseheads affectionately here in Milwaukee.
I always thought momentum was the most overworked word in sports, especially in baseball. Maybe it's not.
For Tony Kubek, I'm Bob Costas. Let's join Vin and Joe in Cleveland.